Okay.
Yeah.
Alana, I'm really thrilled to have you on to talk about difficult relationships, but really growing in difficult relationships. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
I love following your Instagram because you have so much just really great content. And you're also a podcast host, a partnership aligned. So I wanted to have you on because you share really great content. And you've got a story that I'm interested in hearing because I've only heard like the tiniest bit of it. So could you share just a little bit about your journey with my audience of really developing growth through the process of a difficult relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was married to a man that I was like really in love with, and we met at a healthy time,
Mm-hmm.
and he became unhealthy and kind of went back to some old demons that I wasn't even really aware of while we were
Yeah.
together.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of red flags looking back, and I
They're
just
always there, aren't they? It's just you
know,
see
I
them
know.
later. Yeah.
Well, it's not, I saw them, but I didn't want them to be
Ignored
true.
them. Yeah.
I didn't want them to be true. And I am like amazing with minimization. So,
Mhm.
I just, it was very easy for me to like sweep it under the rug. It's not, it's not that bad. Like, I really know who he is, like all that stuff. Right. So,
Denial, yes.
yeah, 100%. And like,
Right.
listen, no shade on him. He's like a really good guy. He's just
Mhm.
not well.
Mhm.
And so anyway, everything kind of hit the fan when we had a baby. So my son is 3.5 now. And my husband and I split up when my son was 15 months old. So just to give you a little
Okay.
bit of a timeline, and we had been
Yeah.
together for a few years. So the relationship, especially post marriage and baby, got very difficult. He was not well, really not
Mhm.
well. There were a lot of
Mhm.
addictions. I didn't even realize how bad the gaslighting was. There was a lot of manipulation, just um, it was a very difficult relationship. And I lied to myself a lot about
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And I don't even think that I realized that I was in a difficult relationship until it was so blatant that I couldn't ignore it anymore. But looking
Mhm.
back now, being the healthier version of myself, like it was difficult way before I thought it was difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's
so
amazing what you can carry when you're trying not to pay attention to it, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, it's a little scary, actually. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I had this like fierce desire to grow. Like I wanted to grow. And for me, that didn't mean not being with him, not at that point.
Mhm.
And I was a new mom and I just really wanted to grow. And what was holding me back from growing was trying to manage his growth or lack thereof.
Mhm.
I was very much codependent in the sense of like, what is his mood going to be today? When
Right.
he
Yeah.
gets home from work, is he going to be bitching about it or is he going to be okay? And like, what's going on
Mhm.
there? And when he comes, like it was always about like what's going on with him and trying to manage his mood, walking on eggshells, all of that stuff.
Right.
And, if you think about it, like he didn't ask me to do any of that, right? Like I just decided that that's where I needed to go. And I got introduced to life coaching randomly. Somebody like sent me a podcast, and I was a therapist at the time. And unfortunately, in the world of therapists, there isn't that much talk about coaching. At least not where I was. Maybe
Mhm.
they're now in different areas. But anyway, so I got introduced to coaching, and I listened to this podcast by this coach, and she talked about marriage in a way that I had never heard before. And it was very much about like extreme ownership, like really take ownership of where you're at. If you have a difficult partner, that does not mean that you're a victim.
I love that.
And it felt so liberating for me.
Mhm.
So I did some digging and found a coach of my own, not necessarily that one, but another one under the same methodology. And I got to work. And it only took me a few sessions. It was like so quick. I was so ready. It took me a few sessions for me to really release him from needing him to be any different.
Yes.
once I released him of being different, all of a sudden I had all this energy that I had been expending on him to put on me.
Can we talk about that for a minute? Because I talk about that so much in my podcast about the importance of not expecting him or your partner to be somebody that they aren't, right? And it's so easy to say, of course, he's going to do these things. He's always done these things. You should expect him to continue. But how did you, because I'm hearing just in your voice that it was a radical shift for you, your ability to kind of release him to be who he was. Can you think of what allowed you to get there where you weren't before, but allowed you to get to that place?
It's a really good question. I think that I had gotten to a point with the emotional pain
Mm,
of trying to manage him and the frustration and the continuing to hit a dead end over and over and over, that I was really craving a different way to exist.
mhm.
I
And
think
so
we
in
were,
craving that different way to exist, you sought the coaching and she helped you focus it back to you.
yeah, well, really what she did was she helped me see just how powerless I was over him.
Ah, beautiful. Yes. Okay.
And then I think naturally, once I released him, I was like,
Right.
oh, well, wait a minute. And then I shifted my focus to me.
Right. Okay. I love that. So you were able to look and recognize that you're completely powerless over him. You cannot control him. You can expend every single drip of your emotional energy trying to change him, and it's not going to happen. Right.
Right.
And so if you finally accept that, oh, all of this energy I'm sending there isn't going to do anything,
Mhm.
then you're left with, so then what? So then let me put it back to me, right? Let me focus it back on me. Let me figure out how I can get healthy and how I
Yeah.
can show up different in the relationship. Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. And ironically, this didn't actually happen for me, but it happens for a lot of my clients. Ironically, when you make yourself more healthy, that's the best chance you have of him changing,
So
actually.
true. So
Modeling.
true. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And something that my coach said to me was, you know, even if you could somehow like force him to change right now, do you really want him doing it just out of obligation? Like, it's not
Right.
real, you know, because
Mhm.
once in a while you can get your partner to be different for a day or do something different or whatever. But
Or even a couple months, but
right.
you
But it's like,
probably want
it's
to be
not,
married longer than that.
yeah, it's not, it doesn't come from them.
Right. Right. And then what can also develop as a result is resentment.
100%.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that mixed with had a baby and things were different for me. It was like, this
Mhm.
isn't just about me anymore, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that's what allowed me to kind of release. And I have to say that I was ready. I was
Mm.
ready
Mhm.
because I talk a lot in my work about how like we hold on to grudges and resentments and you know difficult situations because letting go of them would mean that we have to come to terms with some kind of reality that we've been trying to stay away from for a long time.
That we've been very scared of. Yes.
Yeah, and I was ready.
Okay. And so, did you have any grief in that process? So you kind of empowered yourself. You made a choice, which was to end the relationship. Mhm. And then what was the emotional fallout as a result of that on your way to strength? I'm just assuming.
Yeah, well, I didn't end the relationship there. It was
Okay.
a little bit later down the road. There was an infidelity, and that was just my
Boss draw.
that was
Mhm.
my non-negotiable. But because I had spent the last 8 months before that
Mhm.
working on myself, it was a very drama-free decision for me. I was really
Mm.
aligned with myself, and
Mhm.
so of course it was hard,
Right.
um, but it wasn't. It felt clear, which is nice.
Okay.
So yes, there was grief afterwards, of course. There was anger, there was grief, there was sadness, there was loss, there was worry for my son, there was all of that.
Mhm.
And I just sat with it and I really took care of myself. For the first 6 months after we split up, I went to bed every night at 8:30.
Mm.
I don't know what it was
Needed
about
it.
that. I just like needed the rest.
You did. Yeah.
Needed the rest. Yeah, I was tense for years and I needed the rest. I needed to be able to let go.
Hmm.
Um, and what's cool about my story is that I did a lot of my inner work while I was still with him.
I was going to say, because the grieving process is going to happen. You sometimes you get to choose when it is, but who is it? Who is the author of The Magic? Oh, I can't think of her name.
Mm.
I'm blanking. Anyway, she has some kind of quote, Big Magic. That's who the book is, Big Magic. Why am I blanking on her name? Anyway, she has a quote that basically, I'm not going to get it right, but you're going to grieve at some time. Like you get, like it's going to happen either before or after a thing. But grief is one of those tolls, I think she said, that everybody has to pay. Right. And
Yeah.
so you did all of that grieving for the relationship before the end of the relationship.
Yeah, I grieved who I thought he was going to be and who I
Hmm.
thought we were going to be.
Oh,
Um,
I just realized, because the last stage of grief is acceptance, right?
mhm,
And
yeah.
so that's what finally allowed you to get to that point of accepting what was.
Yeah, like he's not going to be who I thought he was. He's not going to be who he was when I met him. Like this just isn't going to be what I thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
And when I resist reality, I suffer.
I think we all do.
Yeah. And when I
Yeah.
embrace reality, I can thrive.
Yeah. Whatever the reality is, you're going to
Yeah,
thrive much better if you accept it.
absolutely.
So, for the woman out there who's in a place and it's feeling kind of stuck in a difficult relationship, are there any steps, or is there like a process that you can talk to her about today, that can help her get from this place of, I feel stuck in this difficult relationship. I recognize that it's draining me, it's draining the life of me. I'm not ready to go to that very scary place that you're talking about. That's terrifying. But I do know that I want to start moving towards health.
Hmm. Yeah, I would definitely say the first step is to like get some kind of a mentor.
Mm, mhm,
Because I think that we can go really crazy in our head within the relationship. And I
mhm,
think when you find, like, for me, spiritual mentors work really well. Obviously, coaches work really well, but also it can be like a therapist or it could be whatever.
mhm,
Get yourself someone that you can start to really talk about what's going on behind closed doors.
mm. You can be honest
Because
with,
there's a
yeah.
lot of stuff that happens behind closed doors in a difficult relationship that when we bottle it up and we don't start talking about it, um, it's really hard to heal. It's really hard to heal when I'm holding things in, because with the stories that I'm holding in, I'm also holding in shame. I'm holding in embarrassment. I'm holding in regret. I'm holding in like all of these emotions.
Mhm,
And these emotions, they live in our body, they take over for us. So like having
mhm,
a safe person. And I would also say journaling, like journaling is this safe place that we get to go to
mhm,
where we can write down what's really going on. But I think that like the first step to moving towards health is to start getting really honest. Like start getting really honest with yourself and hopefully with a mentor of where am I contributing to the difficulty in this relationship, right?
mhm,
So for
mhm.
me, it was a lot of people pleasing. For me, I was saying yes to things that I wanted to say no to,
Right,
and then I feel resentful about it. And I had to own that. I had to own that, right? That doesn't mean I'm responsible for everything he does, but I
right.
had to own that. So like getting really honest about that, it's empowering. Getting really honest about the fact that like this person, I love them and I might not really like them so much right now,
Mhm.
or for the past 5 years or whatever it is,
Yeah.
like just like stating like the factual things and without trying to justify it or minimize it, because a lot of times in my experience and in my work, if you're in a difficult relationship, you are very often trying to protect that
Exactly.
from
Yes.
like friends and family and other people,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
coming to terms with what's actually going on. I think that that's like the first and biggest step. And you don't have to leave him if you don't want to, and you don't have to, like, it doesn't have to be anything life changing yet on the outside if you don't want it to be.
Right.
But as long as you're living like under these denials and delusions, you can't heal.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. The status quo, maintaining a status quo, staying in the status quo is always, always easier in the moment. And so we go through our lives in these moments. I mean, all of our life is essentially just us being present in the moment, right? Or maybe trying to get away from the present in the moment. But in any given time, it's always easier to do the status quo. And so it's easy to say, well, I'll just ignore that, or I just won't look at that, or I'll just, I'll just. But what you
Right.
don't understand is when you do that for moments upon millions of moments, that's your life.
Yeah.
Whereas doing the hard thing is looking at it, acknowledging it, and saying, okay, how can I focus on me and change me? It's hard and it's painful, which is why we avoid it, because the status quo is always easier. And so if you recognize that pain has to be a part of it, but the pain of the moment is going to give you the relief of the future and the health of the future. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad that you mentioned, how powerful it is to just acknowledge. There's a lot of fear there too. There's a lot of
Yeah.
fear, and the fear is the what if. And I like that you say you don't have to make any decisions right now, because a lot of times we think, well, if we acknowledge something, then now I've got a decision to make. When we stay status quo and we ignore it and don't look at it, there's no decision to make, right? We're good.
Yeah.
Goodish, good enough. It's the
Yeah.
evil we
No, you get
know.
to decide. You get to decide if it's time for a decision or not.
Exactly. You don't have any decision that needs to be made. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
focusing back on you.
Yeah, I mean, I came to terms with the reality of my marriage, and I wasn't planning on leaving.
Mhm.
That's not where I was going with it. And I
Mhm.
don't know what would have happened if I didn't find out about this infidelity.
Mhm.
Maybe I don't know what would have happened. I left because of that, but not because I came to terms with the things that I came to terms with. I decided that I wasn't going to make a decision,
Mhm.
because that's
Mhm.
a decision all on its own.
It is. It's definitely a decision. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned resentment earlier. And I think reading one of your blogs or something on your website, I saw something that you made a reference to shower resentment. And is it
Yeah.
simple resentment and shower resentment, which I thought was just brilliant. Can you share a little bit about that? And especially when it comes to difficult relationships, that aspect of resentment?
Yeah, it's like this silly term that me and one of my mentors came up with, where like, you know how like you'll be in the shower and you're feeling really resentful towards someone and you're like telling them off in the
Oh,
shower.
yeah. I have
And
the best conversations in the shower.
I know you're like scrubbing your hair like so aggressively, like, and these are the resentments that really live in your body, right?
Mm.
Somebody cuts me off on the road, I might like, grumble something. I'm not talking to them in the shower,
Mhm. Mhm.
my kid annoys me. I'm not talking about that in the shower. When I feel when I feel like someone is just treating me so poorly and not seeing me for who I am and not
Mhm.
valuing me,
Yeah.
that's a different kind of resentment. That's the kind of resentment where you can't even go take a shower without it becoming a conversation. Yeah.
Right.
And then you get out of the shower and you're like more pissed off than you were when you got in. So it's like this silly term we came up with that I've just like been talking about. Yeah.
But I love that concept, and, I think part of the reason why the shower is what it is, it's the same thing sometimes with when you put your head to your pillow to go to sleep at night. Those are almost the only 2 times now in our very connected world where we're not connected.
Yeah.
And what happens is it gives our brain space in those moments to actually think about the things that are really burdensome, are really powerful or strong, right, in our mind. The shower moments, because we're not on our phone in the shower, at least I don't think so. And same thing with right before you put your head down. And so those thoughts that bubble up are what your brain has actually been working on all day. maybe weeks, months, years, and is just trying to find some space to work on it. But that gives you an indication of what's going on with you, those shower resentments. If those resentments are coming up in the shower, then you need to know, oh, this is something my brain needs to work on. This is something I need to look at and pay attention and do something about, right?
Yeah, and like listen to that.
Yeah.
Because like one of my favorite things to talk to people about is like, listen, it's all hard.
Yeah.
Okay. It's hard if you acknowledge, it's hard if you don't acknowledge.
You
It's
get
hard
to
to,
choose your hard, right?
yeah, like choose your hard, you know?
Yeah.
So we think that if we don't talk about it, then it's just like not that bad, but it's actually like low key running your life.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, you will respond to the world differently. You will show up differently. You will think differently if you're not connected to your emotions. So
Absolutely.
if it's going to be hard one way or the other, choose the hard that supports growth.
That supports growth, and choose the
Like,
hard that's going to make your future easier.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Beautiful. So, what's one last thing you would like to share with a woman who's really wanting to move towards health and growth in the middle of a difficult relationship?
Yeah. I think I would want her to know that it is totally okay to allow him to have his own journey.
Mm.
He gets the dignity of having his own journey, and you
Mm-hmm.
get the dignity of having yours. And you don't need to save him, and you're not responsible for him. And you get to have your own journey that you get to be responsible for. And it's okay. Like, it's okay. Doesn't mean that you have to do anything different on the
Mm-hmm.
outside. And it doesn't mean that this person isn't necessarily the person that you want to be with. Like, there are a lot of things that can coexist. You can heal and actually grow more love and compassion for this person. Like, you can have both if you want to. So it's not an either or. And the more you try and save them from themselves, the more you try and manage them, the more you're helping them distract from what they really need to be looking at. And same
Mm.
for you. So go on your journey, and you can do it next to him if you want to, but just go on your own journey and seek help, seek books, seek podcasts, seek coaches, like seek whatever you need to seek to support you in that journey, because that is actually the best chance you have of having a healthier relationship.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, wait, how can people get a hold of you?
So everything is partnership aligned. I have a
Mhm.
podcast named Partnership Aligned. My Instagram is Partnership Aligned. My website is partnershipaligned.com. So anywhere that you search for things, search for Partnership Aligned, and you will be able to find me. I have all kinds of free resources on my Instagram page that you can go ahead and download.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.